Thank you all for joining us today. On this session, we will be discussing proactive dust collector maintenance. Mm, First of all, my name is Gabriel Martinez, and I'm the Global Training Specialist for Aftermarket and Service here at Donaldson Company. Please make sure to submit your questions on the chat box, as you think of them throughout the webinar, and we will answer them towards the end of the session. So today's webinar is going to be focused, like I said, on proactive maintenance. We're going to start by discussing the basics of dust collection. Then we will get into the guidelines and resources, why service and preventative maintenance is important, and how Donaldson can help you with that. And we will finish up with everyone's favorite part, which is the Q&A session. In case you're not familiar with Donaldson Company, we have been solving customers' complex filtration challenges for over 100 years. We were founded in 1915 by Frank Donaldson Sr., who invented the world's first tractor engine filter. Today, we are one of the largest providers of unique filtration technologies, and we excel at producing high-quality filters and equipment. We pride ourselves on having a global reach with a very nice local touch. Our world headquarters is in Bloomington, Minnesota. We have 55 manufacturing plants and 21 distribution centers around the world. As I mentioned before, as you think of questions throughout the webinar, please type them into the chat box, and Wade will answer them towards the end of our session. During the webinar, Wade is going to be asking you a few questions, and you can respond with a thumbs up or down. You can access this by clicking on the face icon at the bottom of your screen. I'm sure you can see it over there. And now I am pleased to introduce our featured speaker today, Wade Wessels. Wade is our Director of Industrial Services, bringing more than 2 decades of experience in industrial markets and 16 years with Donaldson. So with a background spanning engineering, sales, and product management, he now focuses on advancing connected services and strategic initiatives that strengthen customer partnerships and operational performance. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Wade.
All right. Thanks, Gabriel. I appreciate the introduction. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Maybe just to start off a little bit, I kind of wanted to get a sense of kind of where everyone is starting with in their knowledge of dust collection services. So if everyone could kind of navigate down to the little smiley face at the bottom of their WebEx and just click one of the icons that kind of aligns with where you would put your experience level at when it comes to dust collection service. I'll give you just a minute to do that. There we go. I'm starting to see them pop up.
Yeah, I see a lot of experienced, a little experienced, some experience. That's really good.
Yeah, looks like we've got a pretty diverse group here. So
yeah, indeed.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I'm gonna shut my camera off just to make sure we don't have any bandwidth issues with our participants. But Gabriel and I'll turn them back on at the end for the Q&A. So do that now, and let's get started. Okay, so I wanted to start first by just doing some very high-level dust collection basics. I saw that some of you clicked the thumbs up, kind of acknowledging that you're starting at a pretty beginner's level. So I just want to kind of get us all to a similar level, because I know we have some that are very experienced on the call as well. So this is a basic kind of diagram of a typical dust collection system. On the far right-hand side, you can see there's a fan that's creating flow and suction. And on the opposite side, the left side of the screen, you'll have a series of ductwork. So it starts with some sort of hood that then's connected to some branch ductwork and then into a main ductwork. So the fan is creating suction. that's drawing nuisance materials, contaminants, things like that, up through those branch ducts, through the main duct, and then into the dust collector itself. Inside the dust collector is where you have your filters. The filter's job is to separate the contaminants from the clean air. So the clean air passes through the filter, down through the fan, and then out the discharge duct. Of course, the filter's collecting all those contaminants, on the surface of the filter material, and you can kind of see. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but that vertical kind of light blue bar, that's representing the pulse cleaning system that dust collectors have, and this is a very important subsystem that back pulses the filter. So it's actually shooting a small blast of air backwards through the filter, and that creates a ripple effect through the filter that knocks the dust cake off the filters. And so this is really important because it gives you long filter life. So filters load up with the dust cake, the pulse system knocks that dust cake off, and then the filters can load another one, and then the process just continues to repeat until the filters ultimately cannot be pulsed cleaned anymore and you have to replace them. That dust material falls to the bottom of the dust collector, into the hopper, which is that upside down triangle there at the bottom. And then it goes into some sort of bin or receptacle where the dust is kept separate from the dust collector. Sometimes the bin is directly under the collector. Much larger collectors will have some sort of conveyance system that will actually move the dust elsewhere to a much larger bin or receptacle. And we'll talk about that in the context of maintenance. One thing I want to highlight, it's really not a maintenance item, but we see it a lot as we help our customers with services. So I just wanted to call it out for the group. It's really important that you look at this as an entire designed system. So the dust collector is part of that entire system. The fan is important, the ductwork, the hoods, the sizing of the ductwork, all of these things are designed together as a system. And so it's very important that you think of it that way. And the reason I bring it up is we'll see sometimes where customers will want to add or remove a new process to their dust collection system. And I've tried to highlight there with this little red box where now a new branch has been added to a new process in the factory. And what's very important to understand is the pressures in the system and the flow rates in the ductwork are all designed for your application. When you change that by either adding a process and adding ductwork or removing, the same is true as if you actually take a process away and plug off a branch, you've now changed how that whole system is going to flow and how it's going to work. So just my word of recommendation is, if you want to do that, if you want to make a change to your system, make sure you're working with a qualified person who understands dust collection system design and can partner with you to let you know how you can add or remove systems and what changes need to be made to bring your system back into balance and compliance. So I just wanted to share that because we see it from time to time where some customers sometimes forget that the entire system is designed to work together. And so you want to keep it that way. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about why proactive maintenance matters. Why bother with it to begin with? And what I like to say is, fundamentally, when somebody is deploying dust collection or really any filtration in a manufacturing space, I like to say they're really trying to improve and protect their people, their products, and their processes. And sometimes it's all three. It might be two of the three or one of the three, but you're typically trying to impact those. I mean, filtration at the end of the day, it helps keep your factories clean. It minimizes exposure. It removes contaminants from processes, and it helps you create the high quality products that you need to produce and helps make sure that the production environment is also high quality for your employees. So at the end of the day, this is why it matters, right? You've invested in a filtration asset and you want to make sure it's running well because you're trying to take care of these three things. So now if we kind of get out of the kind of qualitative stuff and get into something that's a bit more quantitative, maintaining an industrial dust collector is just like maintaining any other industrial asset in your factory. You're working to make sure you have the best productivity you can in your factory. So you're trying to avoid things like costs that you haven't anticipated or wasted costs. You're trying to minimize unplanned downtime and downtime in general, right? Those drive up costs. And if you think about it, most of the time dust collection, right, is connected to some sort of process in your factory. When your filtration system is not functioning, now that factory process has to stop, right? Because now you've lost filtration protection. So don't only think about the dust collector's downtime, but it's really the downstream effect to your overall processes or your overall production line that now is impacted because the dust collector has gone down. Secondly, energy and sustainability have been really a hot topic in the industrial manufacturing space for a while now, and it still is. A poorly maintained dust collector is going to use more energy than it's supposed to. If you have plugged filters, now your pulsing system is going to be working too hard, as well as your fan. So now you're wasting compressed air. If you haven't properly maintained your pulsing system, it could be leaking, also wasting compressed air. And lastly, a lot of problems with the dust collection system, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them will ultimately manifest as short filter life. So a lot of things that can happen to a dust collector end up costing you filters. And that's not good, because now not only do you have the productivity stuff we talked about with downtime to replace those filters, the cost to buy filters prematurely, but now also just the environmental impact, right? You threw away some filters that you probably could have got a lot more life from. And that's not good for your environmental impact, and we all want to improve that. So fundamentally, those last two sections, it's all about making sure you have a properly designed system, right? So get it right. And then doing things like proactive maintenance, routine inspections and monitoring, that's going to help you get the most out of it and make sure it stays that way. I mean, at the end of the day, when we think about it, this is how we think about it. Get it right, get the most out of it, and keep it that way. And lastly, before we get into the real meat of the presentation, just a couple of guidelines. Some of the things that we're going to cover today in preventative maintenance are based on an assumption of a 1 8-hour shift, 5 days a week. If your production, if you're running 24/7 or you're running multiple shifts, you may want to do these checks more frequently because you're obviously running that production line a lot more. Also good to highlight, of course, you want to make sure your maintenance teams are wearing proper personal protective equipment, PPE, and using lockout tagout when working with these pieces of equipment. And lastly, always consult the manuals that came with your system. That's where you're going to have much greater detail than I'm going to be able to cover today in a 45-minute webinar. I'll also call out that what we're going to cover today is also available through Donaldson. Here's an example of a document that covers routine preventative maintenance schedule. It's all written out here for you, and you can reach out to your Donaldson representative or to our website if you'd like this as a reference. Okay, let's get into the meat of the webinar today. So starting with daily inspections. So as your maintenance team is doing their daily rounds in your operations, there's 3 key things that we want them checking. They should be checking the outlet of the fan, and it's just a visual check. You're looking for cleanliness, right? That's the clean side of the collector. The air coming out of the clean side should obviously be visually clean. It's also good to check it during a pulse cleaning cycle, because that's sometimes where you can catch like a plume of dust during a pulse that might be indicative of the fact you've got a leak somewhere or a damage somewhere in the system. The dust storage container, that dust bin that's either beneath the collector or elsewhere using some sort of conveyance system, you want to check that to make sure it's not overfilling. We recommend that you change it at 80% just to give you a safety factor there. You definitely don't want to wait until it fills up into the hopper or the collector. So not only is your maintenance team going to be really upset because they're going to have a heck of a mess to clean up when they ultimately do replace it or empty it, but getting dust up into the hopper of the collector, now that dust isn't getting removed and it's blowing around inside the collector, it's reintroducing more dust, and it's going to cost you filter life. And then lastly, you should be checking your filter differential pressure drop. There on the bottom right, it's an example of a basic manual gauge. Our larger, more sophisticated collectors have a digital readout. But a good rule of thumb is a new filter is going to run at sub 2 inches of water of back pressure or differential pressure. And once those filters are really what we call seasoned, meaning they've built a dust cake now and they're being pulsed, in normal operation, they're going to run between 2 to 4 inches of water. That's pretty normal. And then finally, if you start seeing those filters are getting above 6 inches of water of differential pressure, and most importantly, after a pulsing cycle, they're not pulsing back down to that 2 to 4 range. That's a great indicator that, okay, your filters are now loaded to a point where you need to replace them. Again, these are just general rules. You'll want to check with your individual manual and your dust collector design. But in general, this is how a lot of systems are set up. So now on to weekly. We're still doing lots of inspections on a weekly basis. So now we're adding in checking the hopper discharge system, and I've drawn a red circle around it down there on the bottom right. That's an example of a rotary airlock. But you want to make sure whatever your hopper discharge system is, whether it's a rotary airlock or a screw conveyor, you want to do a quick visual inspection, and I like to say an audio inspection as well. You know, a good trained maintenance person can kind of understand when something's making noise that it shouldn't be making. You're just confirming that it doesn't have any air leaks. We don't want to be introducing any air outside of the air that we're flowing through it with the fan. And you're just audibly checking for any sounds or noises that are abnormal that could be indicative of a bigger issue with bearings or something like that. The last two items are basically the same thing but different for different types of collectors. On a bag house, most bag houses will use a positive displacement pump, or we just call it a PD pump. There's a picture of it down there in the center right with the yellow fan shroud around it. Similarly, it's just a quick visual inspection. You're just checking for making sure there's no leaks. There is typically a purge valve on it. You want to make sure that the purge valve isn't leaking. And you're just listening for any sounds or things that would be out of the normal, right? This is just a routine check. For a cartridge collector, cartridge collectors don't use PD pumps typically. They use compressed air from your operations compressed air system, right, that your factory is using. It's good just to make sure the compressed air feed is still set properly. Typically on a cartridge collector, that's somewhere between 90 and 100 PSI, but check your manual for the specific settings required. I've seen where sometimes to save energy, maintenance folks or energy folks in the factory that are doing audits will turn the compressed air feed down. And you really don't want to do that because you're going to get ineffective pulsing, and then you're ultimately going to have short filter life, and you're not going to understand why. So just check to make sure that the compressed air feed is still set to the proper spec. Make sure you don't have any leaks. And then any compressed air system connected to a dust collector should be integrated with a water separator and a basic filter. Make sure those are in good working order and are just being maintained per the manufacturer recommendations there. So you're getting clean, dry air to your pulsing system. And then last, on a weekly check, we also recommend if you have any fire or explosion mitigation devices on your system, make sure you're doing a visual check of those. If you see for any wear and tear, especially on an outdoor collector, if you've had any bad weather, things like that. It's important to note a lot of these systems have integrated alarms. So if there is a problem, there's usually some kind of an alarm system to let you know. And the last thing I'll leave you with is if you do see something that doesn't look right, it's important that you reach out to the manufacturer of those systems for support. Most of these you have to have special certifications to work on them because they're very important mitigation devices. So please don't service them yourself without talking to the manufacturer. All right, monthly maintenance. So on a monthly basis, you want to now check, you want your team checking the pneumatic lines that go to your gauge. So a few slides ago, I showed you a basic manual gauge that shows inches of water. On the right-hand side here is a control panel for a dust collector, where now those are being routed into a digital gauge, but it's the same thing. And they both use similar lines. So you can see there's two clear nylon air lines that are carrying low pressure air, so we can read that pressure drop on the filter. Over time, a couple of things can happen. These lines can either become plugged with condensation sitting in the line, or debris or dirt or material. And then lastly, as your collector gets older and older, and especially if the collector's outdoors, the lines can dry and crack and break from sunshine, weather exposure, things like that. So it's important to remove those lines, and you want to remove them like I'm showing here in the picture. Remove them from the gauge side. Don't remove them from the dust collector side. And you'll want to blow low 20 psi compressed air backwards through the line, so you're blowing back into the collector, not into the gauge or this digital readout, just to blow out any moisture or dirt that might be in them, and then visually inspecting them for no cracks, things like that. Obviously, if they have cracks or they're plugged, you're not going to get a good reading. So now you're losing the ability to actually know if your filters are okay or not. Another thing to take note is, if your dust collector has a variable frequency drive, which is, I just call it basically a fan speed controller, a lot of those are driven off of the reading from these lines. So if those lines are plugged or leaking, your fan control isn't going to know what to do. So it's really important these lines are airtight and in good condition. Lastly, I talked on the weekly to just do a quick visual check of the PD pump. Monthly, you want to go a bit deeper. Now you want to check the motor, bearings. You're checking for excessive heat, noise, which is usually indicative of bearings going out, or vibration. You're also going to want to inspect the belts, make sure everything's tight, driving the PD pump. And then the PD pump does have a small filter. There's a picture of it there on the screen. You also want to just check and make sure that filter isn't due for replacement. Moving on the upper right-hand corner, there's a red circle around kind of the dirty air inlet. You're going to want to inspect the dirty air inlet, looking for signs of abrasion or leakage. If you have any dust buildup, that's a great indication that you have something that's leaking or something's not sealed properly. So just do a visual check there to make sure that's still airtight. We also want to check the clean air side of the dust collector, and that's the two pictures on the bottom. There's a technician removing an access door on the bottom side of a hopper and a bag house, and the picture in the lower left is actually inside the bag house, above the filters, kind of looking down on the bag filters. Again, on the clean side, you're wanting to make sure you're not seeing any leaks in the system, so it should be clean on that side. You're also going to want to inspect the cleaning arm that's unique to a bag house. That's what you're seeing there in that picture next to the technician's foot. That arm rotates around and is pulsing those filters to keep them clean. So you just want to inspect the arm, make sure it's in good working order, and also the pulse solenoid that drives the pulsing through that arm. That's also in there. You're just checking for proper functionality and no leakage. On a cartridge collector, the pulse solenoids are typically on the back side of the dust collector, and there'll be one for every filter slot. So if you have 4 holes where you put in your filters, on the back side of the collector, there'll be 4 pulsing mechanisms, pulse diaphragms and solenoids. You want to check those on a cartridge collector as well. No leaks, because you're wasting energy and air, and you're going to have short filter life, and making sure you're getting good pulse energy through them. And then last, you also want to check the door gaskets. So as you're opening these doors to inspect these large collectors, there's a picture there on the right that shows a good condition door gasket. That's a brand new one from our factory. You just want to make sure they're still soft, pliable, they're still sealing well, and if not, you need to replace that gasket when you put the door back on. The picture on the bottom is a cartridge collector. On those white tri-oval covers, that's the door that you open to actually access and change the filters. Every one of those doors has a black rubber gasket around them. You can kind of see them in the picture. Similarly, you want to make sure they're in good condition, they're soft and pliable, they're not dry cracking or anything like that, and you're not seeing any dust leakage around them, fundamentally. And the last thing, I mentioned earlier about a variable frequency driver, a fan speed controller. And so if you have a VFD that's controlling fan speed, basically as your filters load from being brand new and that 0 to 2 inches of water to seasoned at 2 to 4 inches of water, that VFD is going to automatically moderate the fan speed to maintain the flow per the design. If you don't have a VFD on your collector, if it's a simple kind of on-off, just the fan comes on at full speed, it's likely equipped with a damper. And so what the damper does is it creates restriction. So when you put a new set of filters in, you want to adjust the damper down to create additional restriction so your flow is proper in the ductwork. Then as the filters load, you have to open that damper back up because now the filters are creating the adequate restriction for the flow. So on the bottom is a picture of three different ones that you can see. This one in the middle, you can see it's got a handle on it to adjust it. It even has markings on it where the maintenance person has marked where to set it when filters are new. The picture on the far right is a much smaller one that has just a slide gate on it. But you want to make sure that's adjusted properly so you're getting the right flow rate in your duct. Okay, now we're moving on to quarterly maintenance. So every 3 months or 4 times a year. Now it's a much deeper inspection on that cleaning arm. Again, you're getting in there monthly to inspect it. So every third inspection. Now you want to get a little bit closer. Just confirm the drive chain is clean. It's properly tensioned. It hasn't gotten loose over time. The gearbox in there for that. Just check the oil level. Make sure it's still at the right level and that the oil is clean and doesn't need replaced. Again, if that oil starts to get really dirty, you're going to want to replace that. And then lastly is a much deeper inspection of the fan and the motor. There's a couple of pictures there as an example. You're checking for temperature. You know, is the fan running hot? Are you hearing noise, vibration? You're doing a bearing inspection. You want to make sure they're all properly lubed, oil, grease, whatever your particular fan and motor setup is. And then any belts or drive chains that are associated with it are all properly tensioned and lubricated. So it's a much deeper inspection of that fan and motor system. Then lastly, what do we do once a year? So once a year is a good time to do a structural check of your dust collector. So you're looking at the overall kind of metal housing of the collector itself, the leg pack that's holding the collector up, as well as just the metal housing itself. You want to make sure it's in good condition. You know, dust collectors are a big industrial asset. They last a long time. So as time goes on, these inspections become more and more important. You're also going to want to go a little bit deeper looking at your ductwork. Make sure the ductwork is still sealed up properly. There aren't any leaks because now, right, you're wasting flow rate and you're not going to get the evacuation you need. Also, just make sure that all the hangers that are supporting all that ductwork, they're still in good condition. Your ductwork's properly supported. As time goes on, again, these inspections become more and more important as your system ages. Then lastly, as you're kind of creeping up on a year, and more true with cartridge than with baghouse, but it's probably a good time to start looking at if it's time to do a filter change or not. You know, again, per the recommendations we said earlier. But so check your filters and see if they're due for replacement. For baghouses, I also recommend that you're checking the cages that go inside the bags. Over time, those cages can corrode or kind of lose their structural integrity. and then your bag will essentially collapse on itself, and now you've just lost all the filtration capability out of that bag. And typically, if you've got one cage that's starting to corrode and fail, there's more in your collector that are dealing with that as well. So it's good just to check those cages, see if any need replaced. And if you are doing a filter replacement, you're going to want to check all those cages, because when you order the filters, you're going to want to order new cages as well to go with those filters. Last couple of things that are a bit more technical that we like to recommend. I don't have time to get into the specifics of how you do it, but Donaldson can help you. We do recommend that you do an airflow check once a year, just to make sure your dust collector is still running at design flow. So there's a handheld flow meter that you probe the duct with, and there's a very specific technique to doing it. So the person needs to be trained on that. And it's a good overall check that says, hey, is my collector still flowing the way it's supposed to when it was designed? And if it's not, that's where you can ask other questions. Well, like I mentioned before, of like adding or removing a drop, that's where you go deeper into a question like that. Well, did somebody add a drop that wasn't here before, or take one away? Is the damper not adjusted properly? It's just a nice gut check to make sure your system is still running as designed, right? Again, going back to get the most out of it, you got to make sure that thing is still running at design flow. Hopper discharge system. I mentioned that as part of the monthly maintenance and quarterly maintenance already. So as you're checking that once a year, you want to go deeper on those systems like you did with the fan and motor. And now you're checking for proper belt tension. We want to check oil level and lubrication, any grease zerks that might be in the system. Again, you're already checking periodically for leaks. So this is just once a year when you're going much deeper for more of the mechanical things, bearings, bearings, fan and belts, lubrication, things like that. This is another more technical one that I wanted to highlight. So the way a dust collector pulsing system works is it is designed to have a certain time on and time off of pulsing. It is designed with very specific time sequencing, and that sequencing is adjustable in the control panel. And similar to when I said I sometimes see where people adjust the air pressure down below spec for the collector, I've also seen where people have gone into the control panel and they've adjusted the pulse timing. And you really don't want to do that. Of course, you want the system to be set up to run the way it's designed. So it's good to check this. Here's a picture of one example of a timer board. It's always just good to check and make sure, is it still set the way it was? No one's gotten in there and messed with it. You can check your manual for the proper settings. But this is pretty important, because if your pulse timing is too frequent, your compressed air feed, whether it's a PD pump or an air compressor, it's going to have issues keeping up with it. If you're pulsing too quickly, that tank needs time to recharge before it fires another pulse, so you actually get the right amount of energy going into the pulse and you get a good clean on the filter. If it's turned the opposite way and you're not cleaning often enough, well, now you run the risk of the opposite problem, where you're overloading filters too much in between pulsing, and you could either shorten your filter life, or you get into a situation where the filters just aren't pulsing off now because they've depth loaded faster than they should have. So this is a good check that I recommend you're doing once a year. So that kind of buttons up a little bit of an overview of how we think about taking care of your collector on a routine basis. And so the last thing I want to cover before we get to questions is, well, how can Donaldson help all of you, after we've walked through all of this? Here are things that we can offer to all of you to help you better maintain your collector. And there's two key things. It's connectivity and, of course, full services. So let's kind of dive into those two things. So first of all, IQ is really the name of our remote connection and alert system. It's just kind of the brand name for it. So if you've heard the term IQ, that's what we're talking about. It's really what makes our dust collector smart, but fundamentally its job is to grab important dust collector data it drives alerts from that data directly to the people on your team that are managing or maintaining your dust collector. Like a simple way to think about it is, think of it like a check engine light for your dust collector, but it actually sends that information and that alert directly to the people that need to see it. It obviously has a lot more features than that, and I'll talk about that now. It does have a full monitoring online dashboard. There's a picture of it right there on your screen. You can actually view a photo of the actual collectors. You make sure it's set up properly. You can see the performance metrics of your collector. You can also trend the historic performance. A lot of times it's good to look at how your dust collector is performing over time, not just at a moment in time. So that trending is really handy. As I mentioned, it alerts you very quickly. Those alerts are pushed via email to anyone and everyone in your company that you want it to go to. So if you have 4 maintenance people, that alert can go to all 4 of them. If you just want that alert to go to the leader, the manager, the plant manager, or your environmental health and safety officer, we can do that too. And then lastly, it integrates really well with service, right? Because, well, we still recommend that you're doing these manual inspections, right? I mean, a digital alert system doesn't replace some of the things that we talked about. But what it does is it's a real-time monitoring system that can alert you of issues a heck of a lot closer in between those routine inspections. So your team can act proactively and get in front of problems. So it's a good fit for proactive service. On the left-hand side there, I'm kind of showing there's 2 different ways you can deploy IQ in your factory. So number one, Donaldson has released a new controller for your dust collector called Contura. And amongst a bunch of other really amazing things that Contura does to control your dust collector, it also has the IQ capability integrated right into it. So it's pretty much a point and a click away from activating it. So all your new dust collectors coming from Donaldson, if you request that upgraded controller, you're going to have that capability. On the bottom left is a little retrofit box that can be put on your existing older dust collectors in your factory. And that includes non-Donaldson branded dust collectors. You can attach this to any branded dust collector and get the same data. And the benefit there is, if you have a mixed fleet in your factory, if you've got some Donaldson collectors, old and new, and you've got some non-Donaldson branded collectors, you can deploy IQ on every filtration asset in your factory. So all that data is on a single system, a single dashboard, a single alert system for you to manage. On the right-hand side, I'm highlighting kind of the basics of what IQ monitors. So number one, we're always tracking differential pressure across the filters. We want to know the filters are okay. But as I said before, differential pressure or filters plugging, especially prematurely, is a great indicator of something else going on as well. So it's great to kind of track that first and foremost. It also tracks the relative airflow in your main duct. So you can monitor if you're getting the flow rate that you expect, which can be indicative if somebody's misadjusted that damper I talked about, or an airline has plugged and now your fan is blowing harder than it should because it's not getting a good reading. That's a good signal. It also monitors the compressed air feed into the pulsing system. So if I gave you that example of where you might have someone unknowingly turning the compressed air feed down because they're trying to save compressed air in the factory, that would trip an alarm and say, hey, you're starving the collector of what it needs to properly clean its filter. And then lastly, it also tracks maintenance hours. It can track, it has 2 different hour meters, one that can track total run time and another one that you can use to track filter times. You can actually see how much time am I getting on my filters. We have a lot of customers that like to track that, like to try different things and see what they can do to get the best filter life they can. And lastly, we have over 7 additional add-on sensors that can be plugged into the IQ box, whether the integrated or the retrofit. They allow you to customize it to your needs. A couple of examples of those are, we have a bin level sensor that will go on the bin. You see there the black drum on this particular collector goes on the lid of that drum and will tell you when your bin is filling up. So you actually know that you need to go and empty it without having to visually inspect it. We have a particulate monitor sensor that can go in the clean air duct and can let you know if you're starting to see leakage, or you've got leakage past a filter, maybe you have a damaged filter, or there's a leak somewhere else in the system. That's really handy for those of you that are dealing with air permits and you really have to make sure your collection system is really airtight. We also have speed sensors that can tell you if things like your rotary airlock or your screw conveyor is not spinning. So if it's supposed to be spinning when the collector's on, which that's true, this can trip an alarm that says, hey, collector's running, but your screw conveyor's not. So that's going to be a problem, right? You're going to have backup in the system. And there's several more as well that you can add on. You can all view them on our website and customize it how you see fit. Lastly, if you looked at all this and you said, hey, I either don't have the time or the inclination or the staff to do all this stuff, and you'd prefer to have Donaldson do it, we do have a service business, and we'd be happy to take that on for you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about different things we do and the different ways that we can support you from a little to a lot. So our service business is very proactive based. We absolutely leverage IQ with our service customers. We love it. It's an integrated part of how we deliver service. Donaldson, as Gabriel said at the beginning, is a 100-year-old company, over a 100-year-old company that's dedicated to filtration. So you're getting the benefit of an OEM company that's really dedicated its life to filtration. So we're very focused on that. That's what we're good at, and that's what we want to do. We have really broad geographic coverage that's growing every day in the US, Europe, and Asia. So we've got great coverage. If you have multiple plants and you need service, but you have different plants in different states, but you want them on the same service plan, we can do that for you. Of course, Donaldson has really great will-fit filters. So we can put genuine Donaldson filters in any brand of collector, as well as parts. We can support any brand. As well, we can service most brands. So just like IQ can be applied broadly in your factory, regardless of age or brand, our service team can as well. So we can be a single service partner for your filtration needs across your factory. Our service types would be what you'd pretty much expect. We do inspections for customers. We do preventative maintenance work. We do filter changes. We can repair broken things on your collector. We can do commissioning and startups for new collectors for you. We have a monitoring service where we just deploy IQ, and there's a team back at Donaldson headquarters that will monitor IQ for you. And when alarms go off, they'll reach out to whoever you say. So we'll reach out directly to your maintenance staff, for example, and not only talk to them about the alarm they're experiencing, but help guide them on the next steps and corrective actions. So that's a great option to use if you have your own staff and you just need a little help. That's kind of a nice baby step in that direction. Of course, we use genuine Donaldson parts and filters. And lastly, I want to talk about service plans, because all we've talked about today is doing good proactive preventative maintenance. And for us, service plans are the way to do that. On the screen here is just a snapshot right from our website of our service programs that we offer. We offer everything from routine preventative maintenance visits. We integrate filter changes as part of that if you like. We also leverage monitoring, where we combine proactive preventative maintenance with active monitoring of your collector with IQ, all the way kind of to the far right, which is really an all-inclusive plan. If you just want Donaldson to take care of your collector for you and you want really good cost clarity, we can bundle everything into an all-inclusive plan for you. So these are all customizable based on your need. So we have customers that will kind of do the daily routine stuff and they only want us to come out quarterly, for example, or biannually. That's fine. We can customize these plans to suit how you want to work with us. I recognize that some of you have your own staff and you want to do some things yourself. We can customize to make that happen for you. And then lastly, before we get into questions, I want to just remind everyone, make sure you're referencing your installation and operation manuals. They can also be found on our website. That's really where you're going to get deeper information than I was able to cover in a 45-minute webinar. So make sure you're leveraging those resources. If you have questions about IQ or you're interested in service, you can call our 1-800 number displayed there in North America. If you're in Europe by chance, go to our website. You can request a call back there. They have a series of numbers based on country, so I didn't display all of them. And likewise, you can go to our website, donaldson.com/service. You can see our service programs. There's some reading collateral there, and you can also request a phone call from our website as well, and we're happy to reach out to you.
We are running out of time. There are some other questions in the chat that we won't be able to cover right now, but we will take care of them via email. Wade, once again, thank you very much for the presentation. That was really, really interesting, very thorough, very entertaining, and of course, a lot of good information. And I would like to thank you all for joining us today on this webinar, and I hope to see you soon on the next one that we have. So I wish you all a very nice rest of the day.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.